evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be re-reviewing New Super Mario Bros. Wii, this time with video footage. When I originally reviewed New Super Mario Bros. Wii on this channel, back before I had a capture card, it was the first, and to this day, the only review that I ever scripted, but even that was kind of funny because I just took the unscripted review I did for New Super Mario Bros. U and just edited certain segments to fit the fact that it was Mario Wii instead of Mario U as a joke on the fact that New Super Mario Bros. U didn't really do a whole lot to differentiate itself from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Technically, they are different games, one's in HD, but overall, if you took them side by side and put the levels out of context, most people probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. However, this time around, I don't want to focus so much on how it stacks up to its later entries, but I want to really take you all back to how it felt when this game first came out and experience that wave of freshness that you don't often hear about the New Super Mario Bros. Games nowadays. But when it came out, New Super Mario Bros. Wii was a phenomenon. It was the first side-scrolling Mario game to be released since Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy, so it was a huge leap forward in graphics. Even if you argue that the Wii was underpowered, it was the most graphically impressive side-scrolling Mario at the time of its release. It was the first time a lot of series staples had made their return in any form. Yoshi in a side-scrolling Mario game, that hadn't been seen since Super Mario World. Super Mario World 2, if you count the spin-offs. Then you had the airships, hadn't been seen since Super Mario Bros. 3, and it generally did a great job of really bringing back familiar elements and putting them into a new modernized coat of paint. However, just because it relied on a lot of traditions of the old games that were kind of forgotten about in the later entries doesn't mean that New Super Mario Bros. Wii didn't contribute any new things to the table. It was the first side-scrolling Mario game to be multiplayer, and not just taking turns like it was in the original Super Mario Bros. I mean, on-screen, simultaneous, up to 4 players multiplayer. And as someone who played this mostly in multiplayer with my siblings, and we even one time had a setup where there were 4 people playing at a time, this is the way to play New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It is both terrific and terrible at the same time, because on one hand, the level design, this was confirmed by Shigeru Miyamoto himself, the level design was not designed with multiplayer in mind, so it's absolute pandemonium, especially on the levels that require precision platforming, because the players can bump into each other, grab and throw one another, bounce off of each other's heads, and it's such a laugh fest. It can allow you to cheese certain parts of the game that are really hard, because if a player is lagging too far behind, he or she can put him or herself into a bubble, and then shake the Wii Remote to get that bubble closer to another player to pop it, so you can use that to get past tough platforming sections. Although if all players put themselves in a bubble, then you get an automatic game over. Or you could bounce off each other's heads to grab star coins. The possibilities are nearly endless. And I gotta say, they're some of the most fun times I have ever had in a multiplayer Mario game, besides Mario Kart and Mario Party Superstars, probably. And I think that's why a lot of the early levels feel like they're so wide open and have a really high ceiling, is because they had to account for the possibility that there could be multiple players on screen. The reason why it's terrible is because, again, it wasn't designed with multiplayer in mind, so definitely some of the later levels can be a bit of a headache trying to navigate a bunch of peoples in that space, especially if you've got 4 players. And there's also a game-breaking lag that takes place when one player dies, the entire game freezes, and this can really mess up your inputs, especially when you're trying to do precision platforming. A lot of times, a common theme that my sister and I would shout out when we played New Super Mario Bros. Together was, "The lag killed me." And a lot of times that would be how one of us would end up plummeting to our death. One person died, that would cause the other to mess up our jump, and overall, I think that I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. Like, despite the lag, despite the fact that the players constantly get in each other's ways and the more trolly players can make the game drag on for far too long, I still think it's probably the most significant addition to the whole series. And I definitely am glad that, with the exception of New Super Mario Bros. 2, New Super Mario Bros. U kept that experience and expanded on it on the Wii U, but we're not here to talk about that game. We're here to talk about New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Besides the multiplayer aspects, there were also a couple of changes to the item system and the inventory management, because this was New Super Mario Bros. On the TV and not on the DS, so everything had to be compressed to one screen, so that meant that you didn't have reserve items anymore. Instead, the items worked like they did in Super Mario Bros. 3, where you'd equip them on the world map before entering the level, which I have mixed feelings about, because Super Mario World was only one screen and that had an item reserve. I think they wanted to make it simple because you have two control options. You can hold the Wii Remote sideways or use a Wii Remote and nunchuck. And probably for the sideways Wii Remote holders, they didn't want to have them stretch their fingers too much, especially if children were playing and they had too small of hands. So I can kind of respect that in that manner, but I do wish there was an option nonetheless. Another neat addition is the new power-ups. Now, this does come at the cost of a lot of the new power-ups in the original New Super Mario Bros. Being cut, rest in peace Mega Mushroom, but they also had a couple of fun new ones, and those include the Propeller Mushroom, Penguin Suit, and Ice Flower. The Propeller Mushroom allows you to shake the Wii Remote to spin higher in the air, and then slowly glide down, unless if you hold down on the control pad or control stick to do a spinning dive downward. I probably could have used a better word for that, but I couldn't think of one at the time. This allows for you to skip insane amounts of the levels, but it can also be punishing to players that are too hasty if they try to speedrun the level without properly observing what comes ahead. My sister is definitely guilty of this quite a lot. There's also the Penguin Suit, which lets your character slide along on his belly and also throw ice balls, and it makes it easier to swim in the water. The Ice Flower basically takes the throwing ice balls approach of the Penguin Suit and leaves it at that, so they probably could have been interchangeable. I don't know why they were separate power-ups. Maybe to brag that they had more items, I don't know. Either way, I do think Ice Flowers make for a good new addition, and it works really well with another feature that was brought over from an older Mario game. For the first time since Super Mario Bros. 2, you can shake the Wii Remote to grab objects or other players and then throw them. It doesn't seem like very much, but it can really add up, such as when you freeze an enemy in an ice cube with the Ice Flower, and then throw that ice cube to slide along a group of other enemies. Some enemies can't be defeated any other way unless you have an invincibility star. So it's a lot of fun to try to see how much damage you can wreak by using the new systems, and how maybe throwing a player could lead to your advantage in multiplayer. Now, since this is a Wii game, you obviously have to contend with forced motion controls. So you can shake the Wii Remote to perform a new mid-air spin, not to be confused with the spin jump that you can do by shaking the Wii Remote when you're on the ground. But now when you're in mid-air, you can shake to get just a tiny little bit more horizontal distance. It's hard to explain right now, but if you chain these together, these can allow you to jump much farther and can be done as a sort of jump correction in case you miscalculated how far you had to jump over a pit. Generally speaking, that's another thing I like about New Super Mario Bros. Wii, is there's not that many pits that you can fall into. Either that or I've just gotten really good over the years. But there are other instances that are far less intuitive. There are moments when you might have to tilt the Wii Remote to make a platform move left and right, or to swing something, and even though these are few and far between, most of the time I didn't really like their implementation. I felt like they were just thrown in there because it's a Wii game, it's gotta have motion controls. Radiant Dawn came out 2 years before this, and it didn't have any motion controls, so if it was published by the same company, why couldn't they have told that to the devs? But overall, I do think that the Wii Remote gimmicks were kept to a relative minimum so that you could enjoy this game without having to shake too much except for that spin jump in midair, which thankfully, unlike in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, is triggered only by shaking and not by an extra button. Personally, I would have liked the option to just press the jump button again in midair to do it, as that would be more accommodating to players that might have physical disabilities, but it works most of the time. Every now and then the game would not read my shakes, but it was so infrequent that it wasn't really a huge game-breaking issue. Now, as far as the level design of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, it's probably considerably more stale than you would expect, as a lot of the early Mario games tried to be really fresh and innovative with their ideas. And this game, it kind of just feels like more New Super Mario Bros., but tougher. Like, it's not as stupid easy as New Super Mario Bros., while also not being stupid hard. There are a few levels with cool mechanics, but since the levels don't have any names, they kind of end up being forgettable once you get past them. Thank goodness New Super Mario Bros. U sort of fixed that. Generally speaking, New Super Mario Bros. Sounds like it has bad level design, but in actuality, it's a lot of fun. While capturing this footage, I played the game exclusively in single-player mode, and I'd like to think that I had a great time all the way through. I thought that even if the levels weren't mind-blowing, they also weren't offensive either. And especially if you consider the time when it came out, it was quite a nice surprise to see yet another side-scrolling Mario on a home console, when most people thought that 3D Mario was the standard and the side-scrollers were only going to stay on the handheld platforms. I do think that this game is worth a buy. However, I also hope that you skip the Toad escort missions, because those just require you replaying the same levels again but carrying Toad to the goal. Like, what is it with Nintendo's obsession with Toads? In multiplayer, you play as Mario, Luigi, and 2 Toads. Could they not think of a single other Mushroom Kingdom character? According to Shigeru Miyamoto, they wanted characters that could be programmed the same, and that's why they didn't have Peach be the 4th player, because they didn't want to add dress physics. Didn't stop them from adding Peach yet in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, so they clearly realized that line of logic was a little bit faulty. Overall, I do think New Super Mario Bros. Wii is worth your time. I think especially if you've got a bunch of players and a bunch of Wii remotes, then you're in for a spectacular experience. It plays great, except for the 1% of time when the Wii remote shaking just does not do the job, and it provides the best final battle the series has ever seen. I don't recommend you playing it in multiplayer, but man, the final Bowser fight is really amazing and definitely sets a standard for what the 3D Marios should do. I used to be so bad at that level, especially when I would play in multiplayer with my siblings, but over time, I guess I've gotten really good at Mario games because I beat it on the first try in this most recent playthrough. So I definitely hope you guys do not look it up for yourselves and experience it, as, my gosh, my heart was racing so much back in the day, and it was still racing quite a bit. Bowser has never felt like such a terrifying, menacing presence, not even in Bowser's Fury. So I definitely hope that this is the Bowser that we get going forward. So with that, thank you very much for watching. This is recorded on New Year's Eve. By the time it comes out, it'll probably be 2023. So I hope you all enjoy your year. Thank you very much to my patrons, Matthew Rakowski, Sploonghost, and Splatcat, for supporting me financially. If you would like to join my Patreon, the link will be in the description. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!